Wow, Neil Armstrong. Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a tape delay and with all solar winds.
Nobody that I know of in my field uses the so-called scientific method. In our field, it's by the seat of your pants. It's leaps of logic. It's guesswork.
Don't see the curvature of the earth. That stuff is flat.
GLOBEBUSTERS taking up bye-bye moon man and rover. NASA so mediocre. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is GLOBEBUSTERs taking up. Gotta ride this roller coaster, but the truth is getting closer. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is. Get the shovel for the space hubble, piecing up the puzzle. Need a burst of bubble, evil gonna crumble, yeah. Sit down, be humble, got the body by the fumble. You'll get mad, cause I just fight about your uncle.
And then they call me the liar. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable the pathetic techniques that they have to use to prove their heliocentric model.
Props at the president, Jan got the evidence. Eros laying desert wisdoms, I shrunk them as evident. That the earth electric and its residential residence is heaven sent. I hope you settle in like some sediment. If we so wrong, why they lying to discredit it? That's not too intelligent. That's a guy, not a in court, but we ain't really in the settlement. It's time to awaken from the pseudoscience sedatives.
GLOBEBUSTERs taking up bye-bye moon man and rover. NASA so mediocre. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is GLOBEBUSTERs taking up. Gotta ride this roller coaster, but the truth is getting closer. Sorry, but your ball is dead. But your ball is.
Inner World Productions.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLOBEBUSTERS Tech. I'm your host, Zach Good Times for All, and today we're going to be talking about shaping the field. Now, when I say shaping the field, I'm talking about the electric field and the way it interacts with the world around it. An object that is putting off an electric field, the shape of that object will determine how the electric field radiates from it. If it's a cube, it'll act a certain way. If it's a sphere, it'll act a certain way. A cylinder, a flat plane, it interacts with these different shapes differently, or emanates, I should say, from these different surfaces differently. And even if you have two planes, one on top of the other, it actually creates another type of field. And they've done so much research on this. I mean, it's hundreds of years of accumulated knowledge on how all this stuff works. And it's sound. I've tested a lot of it. We'll be going over another Walter Lewin lecture. Now, this one, I really had to skim through just because, for one, a lot of it was the math involved in all this stuff. He was explaining Gauss's first equation, the one used in Maxwell's equation, his second equation, which is Gauss's law. And it's quite sound, I should say. Of course, there's always, this place is nothing is perfectly symmetrical. So Gauss' law never truly holds perfectly, because, you know, when you break things down, get smaller and smaller and smaller on them, we can only smooth things out to be so smooth. And the electric field, when you get real close to those things, if there's little valleys and peaks, it's going to act differently. So yeah, this was fundamental to my understanding and my ideas on how this place works. was how fields are, the shape of the field is created coming off of an object or between two objects. Remember, there's always electricity coming off of all of us, interacting with just the atmosphere around us or other objects that are close to us. There's always this transfer of electricity, even though we can't see it. Sometimes we can. Sometimes you'll reach out and, grab that doorknob and you'll get that spark. And that's that flow getting so strong that it actually overcame the, the air around it, which was the insulator. It overcame that insulation and actually discharges and creates that light and that sound and that small amount of heat right there. So that even though we don't see it, the electricity is flowing all around us at all times. Before we get into introducing the panel, I have some sad news. I know a lot of people in chat have already heard. Oh, we lost another legend this week on Tuesday night, doing what he loved, streaming Strange World. Went out with his boots on. We lost Zulu One, Mark. Yeah, it was a great
Went out with his
man.
boots on, so he passed away while he was on the air.
Well, he was streaming, and he usually turns his video off, I believe. I know at the beginning of the show he was beating on the drumsticks like they all do, and he does it every week. He was a big part of Strange World, really. He always restreamed them while they were live, and did other shows throughout the week.
Kyle, he restreams with himself small in the corner, and he steps up away from his desk, like you'll see me doing that too. So he had stepped away
when it happened. Yeah,
when it happened.
Oh.
So,
but just a huge part of the community since I've been a part of it. Since 2015, in the comment sections, I remember seeing Zulu One in there. And always
do some memorials. It's kind of you gotta talk him up, and
he'll come in to the chat and hugs and throat punches all around all kinds of people. He was just a great guy. Gave great hugs.
Gotta make a memorial for him. You said we gotta find some footage on him. You said he was on Strange World a lot.
He was always the last call.
He restreamed it on his channel, so he always on Strange World did a restream of the show and had it showing and trivia. So it was like you go to his channel and he would restream what was going on and made thumbnails and that and collaborated with Mark. But he always put out Strange World on his channel.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to go and try and collect some of his.
Oh yeah, there's
audio.
plenty of stuff out there.
Plenty of stuff out there. He was everywhere, Kyle. He was at all of the meetups. He was at all. I mean, he was in person, in chats.
And he didn't just talk. He had FE stuff all over everything. Like he walked the walk out in public. He was a flat Earth proponent for sure.
This is I'm walking in to see you. I am off camera today because my son is not here to fix this, even though he couldn't fix this one. I am still upside down on StreamYard, but I'm gonna walk into Zach and
you could just tell everyone you're on the ISS and no big deal.
Yeah, do this. But this is something that Zulu made for me. He made one for Bob too. This is from 2020. Maisley 717, but he was very active in the community, there for hugs always, and hello everybody. It's a weird angle coming in this way, but I wanted you to see the shirt because I'm wearing it like a big hug from Zulu right now. And I'll step back.
He's definitely going to be missed. Still kind of hasn't fully set in yet, it's still really, really fresh. Yeah. Okay. So Mr. Kyle Adams, how are you doing this week, sir? How has it been going? How has videos been coming along? What you been working on?
Oh, well, I've been doing this big series. It's kind of like a refresh. I did Modern Earth Science Destroyed forever ago, And I'm kind of getting that going again, but with a different book. And this one's kind of earth science for every kid, and just kind of talking about how like an in-depth analysis from. I like how small every episode is, which is kind of because Modern Earth Science Destroyed took a lot of time because it was like an entire chapter of the book every week. And yeah, that was a lot of effort. And I'm trying to encourage more audience participation. And so that's kind of doing this. And what I'm able to do that I'm going to be implementing more often in the future is I'm going to be quoting from the other book as well. And so when the textbook Modern Earth Science says something related to something that this book says, then I'll quote from that and kind of use them both hand in hand. But the idea is to just right now, what I'm doing on a week-to-week basis is I'm making a video and just asking the audience, what are your thoughts on this? And I'll just keep it quiet for like a week, and maybe in the chat I'll get some conversation going about that topic. But I really just want to know, do you believe what this book says about the globe, the earth spinning, all this stuff? Why or why not? And just asking that question, and then I build off of that. And I really collect the comments, and then I try to implement those into the videos, and then just make a response video later about it. And it's been a lot of fun, and it's been helping me to get into deeper study on things. And so one of the things that got brought up was the Michelson-Morley experiment. And Jaron was the one who first threw me a ball on that one. And he did a video talking about that and with a really interesting quote. And so I'm like, huh. And so I went and read the actual Michelson-Morley experiment, like from his own words in the Journal of American Science. And that was really fascinating. Although it kind of changed my mind, or not, it kind of opened my eyes to a lot of things in looking at that. And all of a sudden I'm, after reading his words on that, I'm looking into his other documents that he wrote, and I'm not exactly impressed with his writing skills, at least in the Journal of American Science. That was kind of a sad experience, kind of reading that. But he wrote an entire book later where his writing skills were considerably improved. And so, I don't know, it's just one discovery after another. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And we also have, as you've already seen and heard from, Miss Cammie Nodell. Cammie, how are we doing?
What am I doing? I'm doing okay. I'm reading through the chat with all the rest in peace for Zulo. For those that would like to see some tribute videos, or those who are not familiar with who he is, on Mark Sargent's channel, he's got Goodnight Zulu and a couple different tribute videos all over Facebook. You're right, it did affect this whole community. He was upfront and active in the whole time. We all knew him well. We're missing Karen B tonight. I know she was really shook by this. Another one shook my world.
Yeah.
Hoping that we didn't have a show last week, and she may think that we're off for this season. So I talked to her this morning, but we weren't talking about the show tonight. We were talking about something else. So hopefully Karen's okay, and just a little bit of a miscommunication. But yeah, it's been a hard and settling week. What we're getting into tonight, the shaping the field, I love it's the fundamentals. And when you understand the fundamentals and how it works, you're not just listening to words, you're understanding. And I think that's a great tribute to Zulu, to Bob, to everybody. Just again, that understand why you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
It's all right there. I'm reading the
Yeah,
chat.
the knowledge is there. It's
Mhm.
it's not that easy to understand. They didn't make it super easy to comprehend. They don't explain it as, so a child could understand it. But if you take the time and the effort to learn their language and their vocabulary, it does make sense.
That's kind of what I did with the Michelson-Morley. Is he sometimes used really big words like the observation of aberration. And so I'm like, what is that? And so I had to look it up, and I'm like, okay, it just means earth movement. That's aberration is Earth movement, and so I
But
just
no, there's more to it than that.
yeah,
Yeah, we'll have to have a talk about it. Yeah, because
yeah,
they had a lot of information on this James Bradley and stellar aberration that NASA removed from NASA's official website after Jaron made his video like 6 months later or so.
hmm
I went looking for it again and it was gone. Like,
huh.
could
I
not
wonder
find
if
it.
Archive will do anything with the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, I'll have to see if he's done so many videos. There's so many videos it would take. I know
Yeah,
he's putting out a lot of his older ones, so it might pop up here again soon. I know
yeah,
because he's had his channel taken down before and whatnot, or he removed every video from his channel so it wouldn't be taken down. I remember when he had to do that. So now he's reintroducing some of the older stuff that he had made that back onto his channel. So we'll see
yeah,
if it pops back up.
yeah.
But
Well, that's one of the topics that Bob would talk a lot about. He'd talk about Michelson Morley and Michelson Gale and uh, the significance of them. And so it's been kind of fun to go back and re-listen to what Bob had to say and kind of,
mhm.
yeah, kind of pull out the magnifying glass with him. You know what I mean? Kind of follow in his
Oh yeah.
footsteps.
Yeah, the GlobeBusters 24/7 is back up and running. When Jaron gets back from Japan, he's an overseas traveler right now. I'm gonna ask him if he's found any of the old GlobeBusters episodes, like the ones from way back, and maybe start adding those to it. Because I loved a lot of those old episodes. I learned so much, and I've probably forgotten so much of what I've learned. It'd be a great refresher course. That was my church every Sunday. Those 3 hours, everybody knew to leave me alone. I was going to be watching GlobeBusters. That was what I did. Yeah. So tonight, we're going to be talking about shaping the field. Again, this will be a Walter Lewin lecture. He was the MIT physics professor for 4 decades. And there were so many, patents that came out of his students. It's just apparent to me that it's not just me who he affected this way, that he affected many of his students to not only comprehend physics, but love it for its beauty and its simplicity. Once you understand how things interact with each other in certain ways, it really is a beautiful symphony around us at all times. And he's the one who taught me that.
One of the most important things that you can learn in college is how to take good notes.
Yeah.
So you can kind of, okay, this is what they're talking about. And that's what really leads you to develop good study habits that can be used long after you're done with all that other stuff. That way you can pick up any book and do a more in-depth analysis of it.
Yeah. So the channel that we're going to be getting the video from is Lectures by Walter Lewin. They will make you heart physics, period. Yeah. He's still putting out stuff all the time. It's mostly questions. Like he'll give you a question of the week or this or that, and he has a bunch of, and then he does quizzes on art as well. But he just loves to teach.
Quizzes
Even
on
in his,
art, huh?
yeah, he'll show art and then ask a certain question about it. It might not be who the artist is. It might be what type of art is this considered, or what era did this come out of, or this or that. Yeah, he loves to teach. He
It's
really does.
interesting. That's very interesting because the only way I was able to survive math in college was by taking an art class right next to it. That way, I don't know, for some reason, I've got to have the rigidity needs a way to loosen up. And that was my way of loosening up my mind after all of the rigidity of math.
Okay, now, like I said, I really skimmed through this one. I'm already at 13 and a half minutes in. So there was, most of it is math. He does draw a couple little demonstrations, but the gravy is what I was really interested in. He was explaining parts here and there, but it was all, a 5-second clip here, 10-second clip there I wanted to cut out. So if you are interested in this stuff and you really want to learn, This is how I learned. I went back and watched these over and over and over again. And almost like through osmosis, I just let it sink in. That's how I started comprehending the vocabulary, by just listening to it over and over and over, and then going and looking up those words and seeing what they meant, of course, and then reading, different physics papers and whatnot. But a lot of it was like each of these I've seen at least 10 times, at least. And it, at least for me, I know that really works. It like kind of
the
drills it in.
concepts that are going on there, the ones that he's explaining. And that's kind of the important thing. And then once you get the big picture, then you can pull out the microscope. And then if you really want to, you can go examine all the math. But that's kind of, yeah, when it comes to biology or something like that, that's the way I like to see it. I like to see the macrobiology, and then you pull out the microbiology. But it always drove me crazy when they're like, oh, let's just talk about the microbiology. I'm like, that's not as interesting. Sorry.
All right, so here we go. This is Dr. Walter Lewin talking about symmetry. Now you have to listen, because he's going to say things like conductor, and when we remember that a conductor is like metal, right? It's going to just flow across the surface very quickly, instead of like we had the balloon last week, or was that 2 weeks ago? The balloon where you touch it and that electricity will stay right there and almost polarize it. You remember how I was spinning the balloon around with that stick? That's because the electricity wasn't equal all the way around it. It would grab onto one part of it and just stay right there. So he's going to use words like that. So just remember, a conductor is made out of metal. It's going to equally distribute the electricity, like that. It's going to travel very quickly. Yeah, very quickly.
And so now I would like to, as a first example, use an application of Gauss's law, and I will start with a situation of spherical symmetry. And I use a thin shell, a hollow sphere, which is thin. So this radius is r. And I put charge Q on here, but it is uniformly distributed. That's crucial. If it's not uniformly distributed, I have no symmetry, I can't do the problem. So it's uniformly distributed. We will learn later in the course that it's very easy to do this, because any conductor of this shape, if you bring charge on it, will automatically distribute itself uniformly.
Okay, did you hear what he said right there? That's very important.
Something about that shape. That shape in particular makes it
uniformly. It's going to be equal at every point on that. There's no point that's going to be a higher charge than any other point on that sphere.
It's making me think about something in a microwave, like metal in the microwave. It's at the points that it's higher. That's why you get the shocks at the points of a fork rather than a spoon.
Yeah, perfect spheres that energy will come off of it equally in all directions on a perfect sphere that is a conductor. And that's part of Gauss's law. Now you can also think of that sphere right there as a point source, just a charge of energy, just a spot of energy. And he gets into that in this lecture as well. But for this purpose, he's explaining what is happening. Now remember, he said it's a hollow sphere with a very thin shell. I'm not sure if it matters how thick the shell is, but so he's going to explain what happens inside that sphere and what happens outside that sphere of a spherical conductor, how electricity acts there.
It's like a balloon, but it's conductive rather than insulated.
Yeah.
So we have the charge plus Q on there, uniformly distributed, that's a must. And I would like to know now, what is the electric field here at a distance r from the center, and what is the electric field here at a distance r from the center? In other words, I want to know what is the electric field everywhere in space, just due to this uniformly charged sphere. And with Gauss' law, just goes like that. You now have to choose your Gauss surface. And if you don't choose it in a clever way, you get nowhere. In a case like this, I would think it is rather obvious that the Gauss surface that you would choose are themselves spheres, concentric spheres. If you want to know what the electric field is at this point, you choose a sphere with this radius r going through that point. And if you want to know what it here is, you choose a sphere going through that point. All the way enclosed. It's a concentric sphere.
So it's going to be radiating energy off of it or holding the energy inside of it concentrically. It's going to, you know, fall off equally in all directions, he's saying.
And now you have to use symmetry arguments. And the symmetry arguments are the following. Since this is spherically symmetric, this problem, if you here, whatever the electric field is here in magnitude must be the same as it is there, and it must be the same as it is there, because of the symmetry of the problem. Couldn't be any larger here than it could be here. That's obvious. That's a symmetry argument.
Because spherical symmetry.
Because the charge here is uniformly distributed. That's symmetry argument number one. Now comes another symmetry argument, and that is the electric field, if there is an electric field, must be either radially pointing outwards or radially pointing inwards. So either it has to be like this, or it has to be like this, and here the same, either like this.
So on a sphere, remember, it's always going to be the electric field will be perpendicular to the surface, which means at a 90-degree angle. So what he's saying right here, if you're from right here, it's not going to be going this way off in this direction. It's going to be going straight out at a 90-degree angle from this.
You're thinking of those plasma balls.
Yeah.
Or like this, because we already know if this is a positive charge, that it's going to be pointing outwards. It cannot go like this or like this, because nature could not decide in this.
And whenever he draws an arrow, that's showing the vector. It's just, there's no numbers behind it because the charge is just Q. It's just, this is what happens when you put a charge, you know, to get the actual vector magnitude and, you know, all that kind of stuff, you would have to know the charge, the size, and this and that. There's other math that goes into that, but this is just the basics. This is a charge on a sphere and how it interacts with the world around it.
This got me really curious about, because when I think about a plasma ball, it kind of wiggles around a lot. And so with this, I just see straight rays. And so thinking about that, I'm like, huh.
Yeah, plasma ball is a little bit different. That's not electrostatic. That's the fourth state of, you know, electricity. That's plasma.
I can't think about hair on how it wants to go up.
Yeah. It's if you have enough charge, all your hair would stand straight up and directly out away from the surface of your head.
Yeah.
Problem to go like this or like this. It can only go radially. That's the second symmetry argument. So now, if we go to this sphere now, and we know that E is radially outwards, apart from a plus or a minus sign, apart from the fact that the angle between dA and E could either be 0 degrees or 180 degrees, we know now that the surface area of that sphere, which is 4 pi r squared.
Okay, he's going to start getting into some more math, I think. Yeah, here we go. I just let him draw all that math out there. We'll get
you
to
say, well, there's no charge inside. Still an amazing result, because it means that anywhere inside here, no matter what radius you choose, the electric field equals exactly 0.
Another huge part of it, in an enclosed sphere, it's the electric field inside of there is always 0. Always. Out here, it'll get, you know, it'll start at a certain thing and go down and down and down and down away from it and fall off at 1 over r squared. But like he just said, anywhere inside here, it could be here, it could be even closer to the center. It doesn't matter. The electric field inside of a closed surface, I like to think of it like water. Okay. If there was a hole in here, water would get in, right? Think of it as total water all the way around this object or any object. If there's an opening, the water can then get in. It's kind of the same as the electric field. If everything is closed off and there is no way to get all the way into the inside of it and it's hollow on the inside, then there is no electric field inside of there. Now, this is just electrostatics. This is the electric field. It doesn't mean there isn't electrical things going on inside there.
Yeah,
But
I'm
as
kind of
far
thinking
as
like there's got to be some kind of like a magnetic resonance on the inside, especially when it's got surrounded by all that electricity.
yeah, this is just the strength of the electric field. It will always be 0 on the inside of a closed object, hollow closed object. And there's demonstrations of this that I even tested and found to be true. It was like, wow, it really is a lot less when you just the shape.
I'm just kind of curious about if you're to cut it in half and how it would be, because right now it's like 0 with a perfect sphere, but if you cut that in half and make it a hemisphere, would that make a difference?
I'm not sure. We'll have to see what Dr. Lewin has to say.
And it means there is some crazy conspiracy of all these charges that are uniformly distributed here, which each individually contribute to the electric field inside through Coulomb's law, that all those together, through a conspiracy, make the E field everywhere inside 0.
Okay, why is he calling this a conspiracy?
I'm not sure why he said it was a conspiracy. It's like they're all agreeing to somehow, because it really doesn't make sense. You would think it would be its lowest potential right here, but then slowly get stronger as it got in away from the surface of a negative, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't
His
act
word
the
choice
way
on that is confusing. I'm like,
yeah,
why would he
inside
say
of something that's enclosed, it doesn't act as, we thought it would. So he's saying that the electric charges are all conspiring against us to make it everywhere inside of their 0. Because the
air on the outside can have this electric thing, but they're keeping it a secret. And nope, we're not going to give it to you guys on the inside, just you guys on the outside. So
Also,
they're
your
not
question
sharing.
on cutting it in half and making it a hemisphere, you're defeating it being a perfectly symmetrical object by doing that. So it wouldn't work. You
you'd
would
have to
have
go into a
areas higher and
different
lower
type
by cutting
of.
hemisphere just by the nature of getting rid of the symmetry.
I don't know if they have hemispherical symmetry when it comes to this stuff. They have cylindrical and they have planar and they have spherical. That at least that he taught back then. This is between 2008 and 2012. But yeah, electricity, it gets, like I said, the shape is everything. When you start really making weird shapes, it would, the math I'm sure gets real tricky.
Right, and the same with even making a hemispherical would be complicated. You're going to have, again, your different areas of it.
You can't use the symmetry arguments of Gauss.
Right.
Law.
I really like the story behind all of this. Like, why is he talking about this? And kind of, why is this significant for him? And explaining that, kind of those choices, and So I'm kind of looking for that.
All right. So now we know that the E field inside is 0. So this is for R smaller than R.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it makes it a lot more memorable when I can find the story behind it all.
So this was me playing. Now, he's going to test it in a different way. And if you really want to see how he tested it, I just didn't have the equipment to test it like he tested it. A big hollow metal sphere with all this. There was just a couple other parts I didn't have. So I tested it a little bit of a different way. But this was like the first test I did with my Van de Graaff generator. And it's
Why do
going
you
to
think those are
show,
mushroom shaped instead of like spherical shaped?
well, it has a big thing coming up through the bottom here, so there has to be a hole in it. But yeah, I'm not sure why they made it that little bend in there. I'm not really sure. But all it is little pieces of toilet paper taped onto the sides of the sphere. And it's going to show you that it's all going to emanate out equally in all directions. Remember how we said it always goes straight out from the surface? That's the way the electric field's going to go. But when I start cranking this here,
Set that up there.
okay, I'll just turn it down. So I'll start cranking it, and they're all going to stand up and point like straight out from the surface. Very symmetrical, like he was saying. And since this is positive right here, they're all going out away from it. Remember, if it was all low potential negative, it would come in. Now, when I put the low potential near it, you can see the field lines bending. They call that snake charming.
So I'm noticing your wand has got a lot more symmetry to it.
Yeah, it's more of a perfect sphere.
I wonder if that's helping it become more negative compared to the less perfect sphere.
Yeah, the bottom just has a really big hole in it here. Let me click on this for a sec.
I was not expecting that to be what the bottom looks like to that.
Yeah, it's hollow on the inside, and then there's just a little nub right here where the mount sets in.
Wow, I was not expecting that.
But yeah, that's the inside of the Van de Graaff.
It kind of reminds me of a bell.
Yeah, I could see that.
This
Oh,
one, Kyle, too, keep in mind that it's like, regardless of the shape, that those toilet paper or whatever, your little pieces of paper going out 90 degrees parallel to the surface. And so you can change the different surfaces and you can have these different shapes. It's just that you can't do your neat little math formula. So when they're
Yeah.
talking about the perfectly spherical and the Gauss's law and that, it's like this formula works perfectly with this symmetry. But as soon as you start adding, again, little things into it, you're going to have all of the characteristics of, like, again, beating 90 degrees parallel to the plane in that, but you're just not going to have the easy math or the formula that's going to knock it out like that, is my understanding on it.
Yeah, just thinking of electromagnetism as a wave definitely makes me think there's got to be something here with the bell shape.
and then if you'll notice, I'm not cranking it anymore.
So I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this, folks.
And it's still, you can see the electric field is still pretty strong coming off this thing. It's just standing straight out in all directions. It just shows you how, even though it is flowing all the time, it's a very slow flow. You can see it kind of starting to dip down now a little bit. They're all starting to sag a little bit. And then eventually, if you touch it and discharge it, they just all fall back down to how they were when it started. Let's see, do I discharge it? Oh, you can kind of see them, the top one falling here even more. Oh, and then I started cranking it up again. But yeah, it's amazing how long it lasts. Now, he was saying on the inside of a sphere that, let's see, where's it at? Okay. The electric field is less. So when we have lower potential, it draws things towards it, right? It negative attracts. I'll just say negative, even though I don't like using positive and negative. So what I have here is just a little glass jar. Is that the best? Yeah, sorry about the quality, folks. With some little pieces of paper inside of it. Now you just saw when I had the pieces of paper on the outside of this sphere, it tried rushing away from it, right? And even though I'm going to be charging this up positively, the paper is not going to start flying out of the jar, rushing away from it. because it's hollow shaped, that paper is being sucked down into it. And the outside is emanating off all, probably the most would be right around the rim because it has a sharp edge. So you have this big high flux going this way, but then you also have low potential on the inside drawing it down in.
Line up to the rim and then went back down. But as you can see, none of the paper on the inside is getting a positive charge. It's moving around a little bit.
I need to
There is
redo all
a little
these.
bit of a positive charge in
Like I have a
there
piece stuck to my
because
chin.
the hole is open. Now, if it was totally closed off in spherical, there would be
Just
no
be careful with your camera, right? I think there's a reason why you're using this kind of camera right over
Yeah.
here.
There would be a charge in
Yeah.
there. But as
Don't
you
take
can
as
see,
much risks.
all the paper stayed on the inside. So all that negative charge gets built up on the inside, and all the positive stays on the outside.
We kind of had it back then. There's still some stuff I get wrong in this video. And then I'll show you what happens when we do a hemisphere. Like you were saying, Kyle. I'll just take this plastic bowl
Yeah,
and I put some paper inside of it.
an insulator, not a conductor,
And you will
will
see some
still
things
conduct electricity to
flying
the paper,
out of
which
it.
will
You
then
got me thinking about, I'm just thinking waves right now. I'm like, yeah, thinking of a bell and how the different shape,
didn't take very long.
kind of like a sound, an audio kind of a thing, kind of directing it. That'll
So
make a
see,
difference.
Even
while it's
Yeah.
more open like that,
something is
you are
open.
getting pieces that are flying out
Now,
now.
see, I can grab that, and I didn't get shocked at all.
But now when I show you the inside of the bowl, you'll see down on the
The
rim,
electric charge goes
like
to
right
the
here
tube.
where it's really the most
There you
angle,
go.
there's
Into
going to
the
be paper
and out.
all stuck
But this
around to
thing
it.
wasn't.
Okay, where's it
It's
at?
negative. It's
Right here.
the paper.
See how it's stuck?
Was,
A lot of bowls, this will be a high point right here. And then this little rim right here, it always usually dips down a little bit more. Well, all
And that's
that
a
paper,
plastic bowl, right?
yeah,
So that's going to be an insulative like bowl,
yeah.
which is interesting when it's right next to that because it's getting all staticky. It wasn't staticky like that before, but all of a sudden touching this, even though that is not conductive, all the paper is reacting to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which tells you something, because
positively charged.
how is that happening if that's an insulative? It kind of messes with my mind here when considering what Walter Lewin just said, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, this is one
that
I'm going to
shouldn't be
have
happening
to
if that's completely an insulator.
Well, it'll still, remember, it'll still do it. It just takes a lot longer to release the charge. So an insulated object will still gather the charge, but it's harder for it to have it travel along its surface and then go to other things. It will. Nothing is a perfect insulator. The closest thing we have is pure water, which we can't really use, but is always up in the air at all times. There's always.
Yeah, that was a very interesting thing I totally learned right here on GLOBEBUSTERS, is that about water, about how if there's no salt in the water, nothing happens, but you add the salt and then that's when you can get shocked.
That's when it becomes a conductor, exactly. All right, so now we're going to go to the next type of symmetry. Did I skip over? No, cylindrical's right there. Okay. And I was questioning whether or not I should show this part. But it got me really thinking about like the dielectric plane and how if
Parallel surfaces.
this were the dielectric plane, well, he's going to explain that whatever charge you have up here, you will have an equal and opposite charge on the opposite side of that plane, just like a magnet, right? If there's a magnet there and you have your dielectric plane, you go this far away from it, the field is a certain strength. You go the exact same distance in the opposite direction, the field will be the exact same strength, just the opposite polarity.
His plane seems like paper thin, and that I think there's a kind of a difference. And so when I'm thinking about the
Well,
Earth,
yeah,
who knows how deep the Earth is?
Yeah, but if you step away from it far enough, the Earth could look paper thin as well,
Yeah.
right? I mean, depending on how deep it is and how thick it goes, whatnot. Yeah, you have to look at it at a grand scale. It's paper thin right here, but it's at least we know what, like 24,000 miles from one side to the other. So that, I don't know, that could be, and we only have what, 7 miles down, 8 miles down.
It's interesting. I never quite thought about like how high we can really send a balloon up into the air as compared to how deep we can dig. I wonder if there's kind of some kind of relationship with the deepest depth we can get versus the highest height we can get.
That's an interesting thought. Yeah.
This is my Gauss surface. It is a closed surface.
This is cylindrical symmetry.
Three conditions have to be met.
We'll go
for you
through
to be
the
able to
three
calculate
conditions,
what the E
and then we
vector
will
is
we'll
at
jump
that
on to the
location
next
D.
part.
The
Oh,
first one
now listen, he's going to
has
say
be
the
met
E
for
vector.
you to be
Remember,
able to
there's a
calculate
vector.
what the E vector is at that location D. The first one is this is a flat plane here, and this is the same flat plane, must be parallel to this plane. That's a must.
So these two surfaces have to be parallel with this one. You can't have one going up at an angle, yada, yada, yada. They're all parallel.
If you don't do that, you can't use Gauss' law. The second one is that these vertical walls that you have here are indeed perpendicular to that plane. In other words, these are parallel and these are exactly vertical.
All right. So when he said you can't use Gauss's law if they're not parallel, that just tells me the math is invalid because that's all it is.
Well, no,
Gauss's
there's
formula.
other ways to do it. You know, you just can't use Gauss's law because it's not symmetrical. It has
Gauss's
to be
law is based
symmetrical.
on the
Symmetry.
parallelism.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still stuff can happen if it's not, but that, yeah, the math only applies in this situation.
Exactly.
Vertical, if you do this, you're dead in the waters. You can't use Gauss' law very effectively. And then the third argument, which is very important, that this flat surface is a distance d above the plane, and that this flat surface is exactly the same distance below the plane. And you can already smell why that is important. Because if you ever want to use a symmetry argument, if this plane is uniformly charged, the electric field vector here in terms of magnitude obviously must be the same as there in terms of magnitude, maybe not in terms of direction, as long as this d is the same as that d. So that's why it's important that the two d's are the same.
Such a good teacher. Okay, he did some math. I think this is sigma equals charge over A. Yeah. Then he did his 2 epsilon 0. When I was watching these, I got such a kick because he talked about his epsilon 0 and how much he loved it. Yeah.
So if this is that plane,
good teacher.
And if the plane is positively charged, then E would be like this here, and E would be like this here. And
so when you have things that are positively charged, or, you know, a higher potential than the area around it, then the E vector, the electric field vector, force and magnitude, is always away from it. Perpendicular, 90 degrees. Won't be off at an angle like this. It'll always be up and down like that.
And it would be independent of distance. And if it is negatively charged, the E would be like so, and it would be like so, pointing towards the plane. And in all cases, would the magnitude be sigma divided by 2 epsilon 0. Does it mean if I go very far away from that plane that it is still independent of the distance? Yeah, if that plane is infinitely large.
so important right there, right? Can I go away at an infinite distance and it'll still read like that? He says yes, if the plane is infinitely large. Now, eventually, you get to the edge of the plane, of course, it's going to be different if it's not infinite, right? You get away from that even further than just the edge and go way far away, it's going to start acting more and more like a point source, even if the plane is very large. But if you have a 100-foot by 100-foot plate that you charge up and you're reading the field around it, well, if you step really far away from the measurements, because it's going to fall off differently because it's not perfectly symmetrical. It's not a sphere, so it's not going to fall off at 1/r². You're going to have different measurements at the edges that'll be stronger and this and that. But once you get far enough away, that plate, even though it's very large, will still act like a point source if you get far enough away. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay, he's going to pretty much say the same thing right here.
That's kind of the way it is with every, just I think about a light and about how up really close, a large spotlight isn't a point source because it's so huge. But if it's at a really far distance, then that giant light becomes like a point source.
Mm-hmm. Or even think of it as like 5 different lights that are just close together.
Yeah.
Or even just 2 car lights.
Yeah.
You can see both of them. You can see them both. They're 6 feet apart at least. And you're like, wow, I can. But as they get further and further apart, it looks like one light source now.
That's a really good example.
Yeah.
As large as the lecture hall here, then clearly it would hold very accurately as long as I stay relatively close to the plane. In other words, if my distance to the plane is small compared to the linear size of the plane. But if I go miles away, well, of course, then that plane is charged, looks like a point charge. If I'm 5 miles away from 26/100, if the plane is only as large as this lecture hall, then it looks like a point charge. And obviously, the electric field will then fall off as 1/r². So when I say the E field doesn't change with distance, it means, of course, that you have to be relatively close to the surface, relative to the linear size of that surface.
Which is huge, right? When you think about our electric field and how it grows. They say it grows, equally as it goes up. 100 volts, 100 volts, 100 volts, 100. It's 1/r² would be 100 volts, 200 volts, 400 volts, 800 volts, 1600 volts. So it would fall off exponentially. It would get stronger exponentially. As to, we don't have that here. And they don't ever say that it does that. Not that I think they even know. We can't get, the only way I see, I've gone through all their ways of measuring the electric field without being grounded. Like, how do you tell the difference of a charge without having, neutral to charge it against, to measure it against? How do you know the difference between these two things? I don't think you can do that. I just don't. And the highest we can get a wire up into the atmosphere is about 2 kilometers. They've attached them to rockets, and then the wire disintegrates and just evaporates. And there's nothing to measure, So I don't think we'll ever really know this stuff all that well.
I think that detail alone is really significant. I'm really curious about the different gauges of wire that they used. And yeah, just the experience behind that just sounds really fascinating.
Yeah.
Always points towards the center, and then the red arrow always points away from the center.
Yes. So if you have 2 different plates, the only place where they're equal is between the 2 plates. They're going both in the same direction. Whereas once you step outside of the plates, they are fighting each other then. So in between those 2 plates, the vectors are working together in the same direction. All right. And then let's see, what else did I pull?
To calculate for you a much more complicated configuration.
That's the one we just did. I must have did that one twice.
Constant.
Here we go.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, just kind of the way his presentation style kind of throws me off a little bit. So it's like having a whole deck of cards that interesting facts about electricity and electromagnetism and electrostatics, and he just kind of throws out the random cards. Here's this interesting fact, but they're not really threaded together super well. Like I can't really follow like the story here, like why this is important to like his audience, and you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So now he's going to do one of his tests. And he's going to show you that if you have a really large plane that's charged compared to a sphere, that on that plane, it's going to fall off slower. It's going to be stronger than on the sphere. The sphere is going to fall off at 1/r square, as to where on the plane, it's going to, you know, fall off differently. Remember, he said if the plane is infinite, then it's going to fall off slower and slower and slower. Not until you get further away does it start acting like a point source as well.
He's trying to demonstrate how he can use the electrostatics to move things, or
well, yeah, well, showing that the force that's going to be created between his Mylar balloon and this plane is going to act differently than it's going to with just the balloon and the Van de Graaff sphere. So the flat, large plane, as he's moving the Mylar balloon closer and away from it, the angle is going to change less with the distance. So as he moves away, the angle is going to go down, but it won't go down as much as the sphere.
It's kind of like the inverse square law.
Well, yeah, the sphere will fall off at the inverse square law. So it's going to be much weaker than the large plane because electricity acts differently coming off of a plane, at least when you're close to the plane, right? Like you said, if you step to the back of the lecture hall, that plane is going to start acting like a point source. Once you get so far away, it'll act just like the Van de Graaff generator. But when you're up close to this plane, you're going to see as he's moving back, he said like 20 centimeters, the angle isn't going to be as large as when he moves 20 centimeters away from the sphere. So he's going to show that the charge of the field falls off more drastically because it's spherical than it does if you have that large plane that you're close to, even though they're the same potential. So the amount of potential hasn't changed. The only thing that's really changed here is the shape and how the other things interact with those shapes. Of a plane, the electric field will get weaker, much
it wasn't
slower.
exactly a plane though.
Well, that big plane he had,
Oh,
that big flat, yeah, that was his plane, his example for a plane. And as long as he was close to it, you notice that it didn't get that weak. The angle kind of stayed out the same until he got kind of far away from it. To whereas the sphere, as soon as he started moving it, the angle started dropping a little bit, you know, the whole time. It just got weaker and weaker
That's
and
what
weaker.
we're doing to compare and contrast with is the angle with the wall there versus the angle without the wall there, and kind of the way the wall affects that.
Yes. Yep. So the only thing that they were changing there was the shape that the electric field was coming off of and interacting with that Mylar balloon.
Okay.
So he was showing you that with the balloon or with the big
With the wall.
plane, with the wall there, that the electric field, it took longer, further away for it to get weaker and weaker and weaker.
So it could go farther.
Yeah, the angle kind of stayed the same as he drew it back. And not until he got to a certain part did it start actually falling down. Here, we'll go over that part again.
Yeah. Kind of with that context of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
If I were this,
like the bell on top of it, and try to do the same thing and just changing the shape of the flat surface, and so it's more of a cone shape going outward. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And seeing if that would affect it any differently, because we are understanding that you can manipulate the environment to get different effects. And so if we manipulate the environment some ways, we can get a larger effect, and in other ways we can reduce that effect.
Yeah, well, that's you start getting into ionic wind and things like that on jets. The little points that come off the back of that's to release electrostatic charge on the wings. Ships out at sea, the big metal mass on certain sailboats and whatnot, they'll have little points coming off of them. Sailors at sea used to see it. They said that the mass would start glowing blue. And it was because of the electric charge building up on there and creating what they call St. Elmo's fire.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was like one of the first places where we saw electricity interacting, at that type of a level, not just a lightning strike that was like, but actual gathering and like making noise and crackling. And yeah, would be a wild thing to see. I would love to see a St. Elmo's fire somewhere in nature. And I think that does it for, yeah.
Got me left with so many more questions than I do answers. But that's kind of the point of an experiment,
teacher.
right?
Yeah.
The point of an experiment is to find out something that you didn't know beforehand. If you already know what the outcome is, then it's a demonstration. And
he has another really good demonstration here, a couple actually, that he does. But we're running a little bit behind here, and I need to get to bed so I can get up early in the morning for Ironworks. But no, it's a great lecture. This is lecture 3 of the 802 Electricity and Magnetism by Dr. Walter Lewin. His channel here is on YouTube is Lectures by Walter Lewin. They will make you love physics. If you just type in Walter Lewin, I'm sure it'll pop right up. Amazing teacher. I've learned so much from this man. He's been just an amazing teacher. Really, he loves teaching, and you can tell.
Yeah,
but
all I want for Christmas now is a Van de Graaff generator, so I can go and experiment and find out what I can do with it, because I'm really curious about this and kind of the effect of the wall here, and like that wall looked like it was just a plastic sheet, which would be like
aluminum foil. It was a piece of aluminum foil.
It was transparent though, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, okay, just aluminum foil.
No, yeah, it was a piece of foil.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, because I'm really curious about the ways it can be applied, what you can do with it. All I could see so far is being able to move an object, which is something significant in and of itself. But I think there's more.
Yeah, oh yeah, this isn't so much for practical things right here that he's showing us, even though there are practical things that are done. It's just on a much smaller scale, capacitors and stuff like that. But this is just showing you how it interacts. So you get that understanding and comprehension of, the phenomena of electrostatic charge and how it moves about. Always think of the air moving around you. The electric field is doing the same thing. It's fluid, and it flows from one thing to another. We're all connected by it. It's really amazing. But that's going to do it for tonight's show. Thank you all for coming and hanging out.
Thank you for the brain candy.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. We will be back next week, same time, same place. Kyle, what you got going on this week?
I'm collecting commentary for my next big episode with the book here, and I'm going to be sharing that on the GLOBEBUSTERS Facebook page. So if anyone would like to come and share some commentary about what you believe and why you believe it, I'd really appreciate that. I want to get some more traffic over there on the GLOBEBUSTERS Facebook page. Yeah, this next one is about, it's called the wobbler. And what you do is you take a hard-boiled egg and compare it to the spin of a raw egg. And the book says that the globe spins like a raw egg. And I thought that was really funny. So it's like, okay, so they're trying to make big claims about the interior of the earth, and they're talking about just the way the earth spins. And it's like, why would they say that? It's just really funny. But yeah, I'll do a video and I'll read you exactly what the book says, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say. If you got any memes to share about the spin of the earth or the interior of the earth, please find my video. It'll be posted hopefully later today. And so on the GLOBEBUSTERS Facebook page.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Cammy, what you got coming up this week?
Well, we have Iron Realm tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, and just trying to like find some dreams and find some settling. It's been a bit crazy and unnerving, and hopefully things will settle down and get a little bit happier. So reaching for
Yeah,
that.
it's always hard losing another member of the community, especially one that was always so positive and always everywhere. Like you'd see him in all kinds of chats, just all over the place. And he wore Effie on his sleeve. You know, he was one of those OGs out that was out there in the street with the shirts on and stuff like that when it wasn't cool or when it wasn't, you know, when it was much more frowned upon. Yeah, he was one of those that was, oh, I'm gonna miss him.
It's amazing just getting out there and seeing the way the community reacts. And so before I'd go out there and just hold up Abolish NASA, and it got to a point where I'm getting way more thumbs up, yeah, than thumbs down for just saying Abolish NASA. And then I took it another step with the earth is flat and just seeing the reactions to that. And you make that big, bold step and making that public in public places, you're going to find a lot more people out there who agree with you than you'd ever imagine. It's really fun.
Yeah, the tide is turning. That's for sure. There are so many more awake people out there now that are at least willing to have the conversation. You know, they've heard about it. They've lived the last few years and they've been shook awake by all these lies that we've had to live through. And it's a beautiful thing seeing all these people wake up. It really is. It's their spells are wearing off
about it too. And that's kind of the thing that makes me the most nervous is some people, when you wake them up, they get angry. And so that makes me the most nervous. So,
well, yeah, that's why I think grassroots is so important for this.
Yeah,
it really is. You don't want, 100 million people all mad all at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't want to burn down NASA. I want to use those buildings and let our children use them to learn things and actually, share knowledge.
History.
Yeah, let's
we got to
not
where we are
destroy
today.
it. Let's use it. All those, satellites, right? Things hanging on balloons. I would love to get the real data to know what's really going on up there, as much as they know, at least. I would love to have real data to know how high the Sechi and Soho and Lascaux satellites are flying and things like that. The stuff that I can't get. So yeah, one of these days, maybe. I'm hoping to see it in my lifetime. We'll see. But that's going to do it for tonight's show. Like I said, thank you all again for coming and hanging out. Kind of a somber week here. But we will keep on. I know that's what Mark would have done. For sure. So big shout out. Everybody out there that, is hurting on this one. I know he was a big teddy bear that got to hug a lot of people. And he had enough love for everybody. He really did. He's just an awesome guy. I'm going to miss him.
One of my lifetime goals is when you get out there and make enough noise that the devil says, I got to do something about this guy.
Yep. Yeah. So we will be back next week, though. And next week is where Walter Lewin explains gravity, right? Or what causes the downward vector here on Earth. And he explains the difference of what causes the vector here on Earth and gravity. He explains to a physicist what gravity is. And I'm not going to share that with you right here. I don't want to ruin it. So come back and hang out next week. But yeah, he explains what gravity does and then what the electric field on Earth here does.
I think that one's much more consequential. It's
Yeah.
a much bigger deal, especially in our world.
Absolutely. So thank you all again. We're going to head out of here. Remember, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind because there's truth inside. Peace out, everyone.
Peace.
Yes.